I'm John Kaiser at the Metals Investor Forum in Toronto, June 12th, 2022. I'm talking to Don Bubar, CEO of Avalon Advanced Materials. Don, welcome to Toronto. Avalon's flagship project is Separation Rapids, which has a substantial lithium deposit. But you recently did something unusual. You're addressing the problem that the refining of lithium concentrates, whether they come from petalite or spodumene, is mainly done in China right now. So you have formed a partnership with Essar, the Indian conglomerate, to develop a lithium hydroxide refinery in Thunder Bay. Tell me why this distinguishes you from other juniors that are just hoping to mine and produce a concentrate that gets shipped to China.
Well, we have a lot of experience in the sector now, and I've learned over the years that the key step to getting one of these supply chains started is establishing the processing capacity to make the product in a form that will meet the needs of the end users in the marketplace. And it's also the most expensive part of the operation to get set up. So we needed an investing partner to work with us on it. And now that there's so much interest in creating the lithium battery materials supply chains here in Canada, we've got lots of demand for the product. And it was a matter of finding easy access to capital to support getting the refining facility established. And our model has been to establish it in Thunder Bay to make it not just for our resource, but serve the needs of other aspiring new producers of lithium mineral concentrates in northwestern Ontario. I'd like to remind investors that there's no shortage of lithium pegmatites in the Canadian Shield generally, and especially in northwestern Ontario. So lots of opportunities to develop other resources. And if there's a buyer of the concentrates, then it's easy for other companies to start to create supply of the concentrates going forward. So we'll use our project to get the ball rolling and then supplement the feed going forward with additional supply, and also treat it as a growth business and expand production over time, because there will certainly be a growing demand for lithium hydroxide and carbonate battery technologies.
Yeah, so if the projections for EV growth are to be believed, we need a 5 to 10 times expansion of lithium supply. And you mentioned, of course, Canadian Shield. Eastern Canada has an abundance of pegmatites, and I personally see the future for EVs being saved by Canada. But your big whopper at Separation Rapids, you delineated that in 1997. Its mineral is petalite, which you can convert into a about 4.2% lithium concentrate. Spodumene converts to a 6% concentrate. If you have this centralized refinery to make lithium hydroxide, which is the battery grade form that several $100 billion worth of gigafactories that are being built require, is this a generic type of flow sheet, this refinery? Does it matter whether it's being fed a petalite concentrate or a spodumene concentrate?
No, it doesn't, because they're both aluminosilicate minerals, and that the process is very similar for both. The difference is most spodumene contains other elements that are contaminants in the final product. So you have to have a process that can remove the contaminants. Whereas petalite, one of the reasons it was always in high demand in glass ceramics technology is it's a very high purity lithium aluminum silicate, no impurities to remove on it. A little less lithium, but a lot less of the impurities you don't want in the product.
Now we've seen a company like Frontier Lithium, which outlined its PAX deposit 2 years after you outlined the big whopper, all based on the work that Fred Breaks and the other Ontario Geological Survey people did. And then they stepped north of it. This project was basically a dog for 20 years. And then they also found the Sparks deposit. You also own you've done enough work, you own the trend there. What is the potential to find more than just a big whopper, so that you're not just using up, say, 60% of the refining capacity of the Thunder Bay refinery. What is the potential for you to scale up and have 100% of the supply feeding the scale of this refinery?
Well, we have other lithium pegmatites on our property, but some of them are actually different in terms of being very coarse grain and look like they would be even better sources of pedalite to serve the glass ceramics market. So I want to be able to serve both markets because there's a global shortage of pedalite and it's in extremely high demand now too from glass ceramic companies around the world looking for a supply source. And it may be even a more profitable business for us than the battery materials because we've got a very efficient, low-cost way to concentrate the pedalite to make the concentrates to meet the needs of the glass ceramic end users. So we're looking at basically both opportunities now and being able to serve both markets. Plus, we'll be in a position to ultimately acquire more lithium pegmatites in other parts of Northern Ontario too.
Mm-hmm. Now, they describe these things as LCT pegmatites, the fertile kind, lithium, cesium, tantalum. Lilypad Lakes, which is north of your Separation Rapids project, you mentioned the cesium and tantalum aspect, which you don't really mention with the Separation Rapids project. What is happening with that project? And also, why is cesium important? Like, nobody really knows anything about it. I know you have to sell it in a bottle because it's a liquid at room temperature. Tell us about Lilypad and cesium.
Well, first of all, at Separation Rapids, there is cesium and tantalum there too, but not in very high concentrations in the resource that we've delineated there so far, but it may be hiding elsewhere in the resource there. But Lilypad is a very interesting opportunity because it's LCT pegmatites where we see a field of them on surface where the concentrations of the tantalum and cesium are much higher than you typically find in the LCT pegmatites elsewhere, including at Separation Rapids. And we've found one pegmatite dike there where the cesium ore mineral pollucite occurs throughout the whole dike. And that's very unusual. It's never been documented to occur like that anywhere else in the world, actually. Usually it occurs as basically a pod within a large zoned LCT pegmatite, which is how it was found at Tanco. And then the other ones where it's been found in Australia, it's always a pod within a much larger deposit. In this case, it's all through the pegmatite. So the potential size of the resource could be very, very significant going forward. And we've done process test work on it because that's always the next step is figure out how to efficiently concentrate that mineral. And we can do it using sensor-based ore sorting.
So Tanco, of course, was mined to a large degree for its tantalum and cesium. How would you compare the Lilypad play to the Tanco project at Bernick Lake in Manitoba?
Well, similar geologically, but different in terms of how the cesium mineral occurs there. But it's important for people to understand that cesium now is in very short supply. And since Tanco mine was taken over by Sinomine, now China controls all of the world's known cesium resources. And it's got lots of demand outside China for which we need to help create a new supply for going forward. And there's a lot of potential for innovation with cesium in new products that can use and take advantage of its unique properties. Because as the most electropositive element on the periodic table, any compound it forms is extremely stable. And the one that was produced at Tanco by the former owners, Cabot Corporation, was a fluid called cesium formate that had same viscosity as water, but 2.5 times as dense, and was a recyclable, heavy, dense fluid for use in deep oil well drilling. And that's one example of many possibilities. So I'm trying to inspire more R&D on research for new applications that can take advantage of those unique properties of cesium.
So cesium isn't just a material needed to perpetuate fossil fuel combustion.
No, lots of other opportunities, yeah, and other technologies going forward here. And I know because I've talked to some companies in Japan and elsewhere that are in the process of innovating these technologies now. Very interesting.
Okay, so this is an element that
Extremely
we know
valuable now,
nothing
too.
about that could end up becoming very significant. Well, let's talk about another element, tin, which I look at the supply numbers from the last 50 years, and it has not kept up with GDP growth in the way that copper, nickel, and all the other metals have. And yet there's a lot of buzz about tin becoming part of the the decarbonization cycle that everybody is pursuing. And you have the East Kemptville project that you've held for some time in Nova Scotia. Can you tell us about why tin is becoming interesting after being a laggard, and what needs to happen at East Kemptville to make you also a tin company?
Well, there's been a lot of innovation on new technologies to take advantage of the unique properties of tin. And this was first kind of started to get documented in 2017, 2018. And Rio Tinto actually commissioned a study at MIT on tin and how it was compared to other emerging new technology metals in terms of growing demand and future interest. And guess what? Tin ranked #1 on the list. So it's already being used in a lot of new technologies. And as was explained recently at the International Tin Association conference here in Toronto, there's a lot of innovation on new applications for tin in electronic circuit boards, solar panels, battery technologies, other ways to use in electric vehicles. Lots and lots of new technologies require tin. And now its price has gone up to record highs and is in short supply. It's a good opportunity because East Kemptville was the only ever primary producer of tin in North America. They just didn't hit the timing in the market right back in the 1980s, but we've been trying to reactivate that site. And that's been challenging because unfortunately closed mine sites are always treated as perpetual liabilities and no-go zones.
Okay, so what needs to happen to jumpstart East Kemptville?
We have the mineral tenure there, but we don't own the surface rights. And the surface rights are still controlled by BHP, who inherited this closed mine site from Rio Algon, the company that originally developed it. And BHP are an example of a major company that's stuck in the past and can't see the future at all. And are not interested in anything but bulk exchange traded commodities that can be produced at a very large scale. So extracting value from resource waste like this does not interest them. And unfortunately, they've been blocking our access for the last few years after we had access for a while. And then there was a change in the leadership, and the new leadership has denied us access since 2019. But we're optimistic now because the province of Nova Scotia really likes our model and want to see us get it started. So it's just a matter of time before we find a solution to get BHP out of the way.
It was kind of interesting to see South 32, which was spun out to hold all the stuff BHP thought was not interesting, has outperformed BHP as a company. Sir Mick Davis has made a significant investment through Vision Blue in Cornish Metals, and he's obviously a bull too on tin, arguing that we're going to see the tin market expand in a big way, and we need to invest in these projects that are outside that sort of Malaysia, Tajikistan, Bolivia, these other traditional sources of tin. Do you see the sort of security of supply aspect of tin becoming a factor in terms of the market starting to give tin some serious credibility?
Absolutely, yeah. And the other key message I always try to make on tin Grison type deposits like East Kemptville and the ones in Cornwall, such as Williams is looking at, are they're polymetallic resources. They have lots of other things in them that are valuable. Copper, zinc, indium associated with the zinc mineral sphalerite, potentially gallium, germanium, and the host rocks are enriched in lithium. And a number of the resources in Cornwall are now being looked at as potential for recovering lithium from historic mine waste there too.
And of course, Nova Scotia, if you reconnect the continents, it's part of that whole same trend, isn't it?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we need to get BHP to stop just sitting on this and worrying about the reclamation liability and uncork the potential that's still left in the ground.
Right.
Speaking of security of supply, in 2008, I visited Thor Lake, which is now called Nechalacho. It was in the early beginnings of the rare earth boom. In 2009 to 2012, we had, due to Chinese curtailment of supply to the rest of the world, we had what I call rare earth mania 1.0, where the prices went to the moon. And all of a sudden, all these projects that were deemed worthless because China dominated rare earth supply were in the money big time. You completed a feasibility study on the Nechalacho basal heavy rare earth enriched portion of that project, and yet it's sort of stalled, going nowhere right now. What needs to happen to make that viable as a development candidate?
Well, maybe you and your readers aren't aware that we actually brought an Australian company in as a partner on that project, because there were a couple of small satellite resources that were originally explored there by Dave Trueman in his days with Highwood Resources for beryllium that also contained the rare earth mineral bastnasite. And I created a model on looking at those as an opportunity to get started at a very small scale and prove that there's an opportunity to create the whole rare earth supply chain there, and then ultimately scale up to include our basal zone resource. And this Australian company, Cheetah Resources, really liked our model and approached us wanting to participate with us. So we basically carved off that piece of the property for them to move forward. And they're doing a good job on that right now, actually. They're building a hydromet facility in Saskatchewan to process the concentrates to make a mixed rare earth concentrate. And we'll start looking at other alternative methods for separation of the individual rare earth oxides. So they get that going successfully, then they'll create more demand generally for rare earths, and then we can come in behind that with our resource. That's also important for zirconium. And that's not, you're not hearing a lot about that. It's another one that's controlled by China now, a very short supply. That's very important in nuclear reactor technology. And if we're going to start to use small modular nuclear reactors as an alternative form of clean energy, then you need zirconium metal as one of the key components for shielding against radiation leakage.
Okay, but zirconium comes primarily from heavy mineral sands, and that comes from Australia and all these various beaches on the coasts of Africa. China, of course, this is like back to the lithium carbonate hydroxide refining story. Everything goes to China to be refined and converted into the end product that manufacturers use. Is the issue the supply of zirconium, or is the issue the processing of zircon into zirconium that can be used in the ceramics and all these other applications that are clearly going to go up in demand?
Yes, it's processing capacity. Although there is one facility in North America that has no supply of the concentrates right now to produce zirconium metal.
Where's that located?
It's in the U.S.
Okay, some NIMBY people are protesting surrounding it, preventing the supply from arriving. One of the things that I've known about the Thor Lake project since the 80s when Highwood had it, and it was the T-zone, which really has a world-class concentration of beryllium. And one company attempted to actually develop it. They were going to do a bulk sample, which was going to have the equivalent of several years of total supply, which is now dominated by Spore Mountain, which is a different type of mineral in Utah. It's the T-zone that's being mined for the rare earths. So what is Cheetah, which I think is now called Vital Resources. What are they doing with the beryllium that's showing up in the ore that they're mining, or are they somehow avoiding it?
Well, basically, it's a zoned pegmatite resource, and the top of it was where the bastnäsite occurred in high concentrations. And the beryllium mineral phenokite's down, concentrated more down near the bottom of it. So they are focused on the upper part, the bastnäsite, obviously. But I'm trying to inspire them to look at what else is of value in that resource too. And we'll see going forward there.
Now, what interest does Avalon have left in that, or what you've handed off to the Vital people?
A royalty interest.
A royalty interest, okay. You mentioned Dave Trueman. Dave Trueman was an expert in rare elements. He passed away recently. You've known him for several decades. What is the legacy of the work that he did for Canadian explorers moving forward and tackling all these bizarre things like lithium and pegmatites and stuff? That's been sort of just an academic area for the past 50 years, but that's now exploding on the scene as of extreme relevance to the decarbonization of the energy system.
Yeah, well, Dave Trueman was my inspiration for getting interested in rare elements some 30 years ago when I first met him in the Northwest Territories at a conference up there, where he spoke on Highwood's plan to develop that T-zone resource at Thor Lake. And kept in touch with him after that. And after I acquired Separation Rapids in 1997, I knew he would have expertise in that area and reached out to him to see how he could support what we're doing. And he recommended a geologist that used to work for him at Tanco when he was working at Tanco, Chris Peterson, who's been with us ever since as our expert on mapping the geology of lithium pegmatites and other rare metals resources. So Dave was very helpful getting us inspired, and he has, his legacy is he's written a lot of papers on the subject of various rare elements. He's an expert on cesium too. He's written a number of papers on that and shown how it can occur in other types of resources in the lower concentrations, but often recoverable by applying new technologies. So he's basically one of the most informed people that ever was in the business in Canada and the whole area of non-traditional commodities.
So he's kind of the person behind your enthusiasm for Lilypad Lakes as becoming a very important future source of cesium for the world.
Yeah, because basically he and Chris Peterson informed me of it, because actually it had been explored by Tanco long before, and then they dropped the claim, so it was open ground. So they both inspired me to, let's stake it and do some work on it. 20 years ago we did that.
Okay, well, Avalon's got multiple critical metal projects. The focus now is on Separation Rapids because the need for more lithium is now starting to be understood by the manufacturers, the car makers. The market itself is still doesn't quite get it. It says, okay, lithium's this little bubble that happened a few years ago, and it's over with right now. So I think it's fascinating that a project that I wrote about in 1997, the Big Whopper, is finally taking the center stage of Avalon and is going to turn this company into, especially with the help of SR, creating that downstream lithium hydroxide refining capacity. It's going to turn this company into a big success. I've been talking with Don Bubar of Avalon Advanced Material. Don, thank you.
Thank you.